hold on a second, like, what? I mean, there was definitely some situations where you just like, I mean, come on, sis. Hi guys, welcome back to the Shannon Show. Hello if you're new. So today's video is going to be a review of Cuties, Netflix's latest controversial drop. I hope everybody is doing as well as can be, and I really do hope everybody is being as proactive as possible in supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you're still on the lookout for some resources, I've linked some in the description. Feel free to comment down below your thoughts on my commentary. I'm always up for a chat, I'm always up for a debate, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. No hard feelings. So cuties. Let's talk about it. But yeah, I'd just like to say, PSA, I'd appreciate if we could create an environment in the comments that is respectful and constructive so that we can have a coherent and workable conversation that's not just basically people shouting over each other. I'd appreciate that, but my comments are open for anyone to say whatever they want. But yeah, I'd appreciate if we could keep it respectful. But yeah, let's just get into it, shall we? Let's get in what you came here for. Obviously, I put it in the title, African Girl Reviews Cuties. I am African, I'm Congolese. Shout out to all my Congolese people. Hey, Bonnie. Yeah, I'm just here to kind of offer my perspective as an African girl who grew up in Western society, who was once an 11-year-old girl. So I'm just here to offer my perspective on things. So let's just talk about it. Let's talk about the initial controversy. Obviously, the initial controversy happened when the poster came out, that infamous poster came out. And I remember my sister was the one who showed it to me. And she was like, look at this. She was very heated about this poster. And honestly, I wasn't outraged by this photo, if I'm completely honest with you. But to me, it just looked like dance moms. Obviously, it is a provocative image, and even things like dance moms, toddlers and tiaras, there's been backlash and issue with it. But for me, I kind of just thought dance moms, they're wearing, they're in provocative poses, but they're in dance clothes. I mean, the clothes that I'm seeing on the poster, I've done dance competitions, I've done trampolining competitions, and this is the clothes that they wear. So to me, it just kind of looked like girls doing a dance that they probably shouldn't be doing. But yeah. So yeah, personally, I just kind of thought maybe it's another kind of dance mum-ish film. Obviously, I can understand why people were bothered by it, but I personally wasn't outraged by it. What I will say is that they did have the girlies looking a mess. If I was one of those actors, I would be really embarrassed. I guess some people would probably be drawn to the main character's pose. But honestly, I think the worst one was the other black girl next to her, because they had her like scooted over, blatantly tucking in her stomach, and she just looked so uncomfortable. I personally wouldn't have chosen that poster for the film. So obviously after that whole controversy, the director has come out and said that that wasn't the poster that she approved, or that wasn't meant to be the poster, which I thought was quite interesting, because normally they run it past people. I mean, it's an independent film. I'm not really sure if Netflix thought it was going to be this controversial, because it had been on the festival circuit and it hadn't caused a controversy there. So the fact that she allegedly had no idea about this poster, I'm not gonna lie, it does seem a little bit strange to me, because it does seem a little bit strange to me that she just completely had no idea. But if it is the case that Netflix have ambushed her, I think she should definitely sue them. They did a number on her, but I'm not sure, because I guess the poster dumped them in it. But I think if somebody did watch this film and still posted that clip that went viral again, which caused the second uproar, I still think regardless of what poster they had put up, it may not have made a difference, because I feel like if somebody watched the film, took that bit that made it blow up again, put it on the internet, I don't think the poster that was supposed to be allegedly chosen would have saved it, to be honest. So then let's get into the premise. Now, the initial premise was something about an 11-year-old girl enters a twerking competition. That was the initial premise. And then they changed it to something about exploring her femininity by joining a dance group or a twerk group or something like that. Or by compromising her values and her family. Something along those lines. And people were still pretty much upset about it and were like, how can this be shown on Netflix? Why is this film made? Blah, blah, blah. And looking at it on paper, I'm not entirely surprised by the content. I'm not entirely against the concept. I'm a film journalist. I've done the film festival circuit, and there usually is gritty films, independent films which tackle issues in real life, which is what this film does. It does tackle real life issues. So that really didn't surprise me. I mean, you see all sorts on the festival circuit, some good portrayals, some bad portrayals. But the concept overall, I wasn't entirely surprised about it or against it. It makes sense it was on the festival circuit. It makes sense that it probably won something on the festival circuit as well. So let's just boil down the concept and why I'm not against the concept on paper. So, the whole kind of femininity thing, she's 11 years old and she's exploring her femininity. I think some people kind of took that as femininity / sexuality. And I saw a significant amount of people saying 11-year-olds are children should be children, they shouldn't be exploring their femininity and there shouldn't be a film about it. And as a former 11-year-old girl, I have to disagree. But I can see where people are coming from. I think people are coming from this ultra protective place where they kind of just like, they're young, they're children, and they kind of forget what they were doing at 11 years old at the same time as that comes out of your mouth. But at 11 years old, especially for girls, your body is changing. Your hormones are flying about. You're boy crazy. You're now self-conscious about your body. You now want to look a certain way. You now want to start wearing makeup. You want to get the crop tops. You want that bra that makes your boobs look bigger than they are. And this is all just a natural and familiar process when you're going through puberty. And it doesn't have to be this dangerous or adult thing. This is a natural phenomenon that pretty much every 11-year-old girl is going to go through, especially in the West. So to ignore that and deny that is not doing anyone any favours, in my opinion. I think it is a very sensitive subject that should be handled with care, but at the end of the day, it is the reality. A lot of the things that go on in these films, a lot of people who were former 11-year-old girls can say, maybe that wasn't my experience, but I knew it was going on. I knew some girls that were involved in that. So to say blanket children are 11-year-old are children and children should stay children, I think is a place of overprotectiveness. But I'd be interested to hear from you, especially people who formerly were 11-year-old girls, especially from you guys. What is your whole thoughts on, should we be making film or art or content concerning the coming of age of 11-year-old girls, or, you know, them exploring their femininity and their sexuality in a manner of they're going through puberty, they're going through it. Because at the end of the day, these things happen, and I feel like when you don't talk about it, that's when toxic things happen. And in the age of information, children know things anyway, so it's just very hard to keep things from people. So I think it's better to address it, but like I said, I think there's definitely ways in which it should be addressed, but I'd be interested to hear from you guys. So in terms of that concept overall, I wasn't against it on paper being explored. Now, with the twerking thing, I kind of just wanted to hear some details because I think context again comes into it. I think twerking as a thing has only really been a recent thing. Shaking your bum has been around for a while, but this whole twerking thing and what it's being called now is only really a concept that has come up in the 2010s or so. But the act of shaking one's bum in African culture, which I grew up in, is a normal dance move. It's just like doing a disco dance. It's not objectively sexual, but I do understand that it has become a sexualized dance. People have sexualized it, and it can definitely be used in a sexualized context no matter who is doing it. So I was kind of interested to see what what the context was. I mean, if you're at a party with your girls and you're 11 and you're all twerking, but it's an environment of it was all kids versus a twerking competition where there's all of these adult judges scrutinizing you, shaking your bum, I think the context is different. So I was kind of like, is this like a full-on twerking competition, like how the rappers be doing it? Or is this just a dance competition where they happened to have twerking in their routine? So for me, it was a kind of let me see type of thing. So going into this film, for me, it was a kind of I want to see the material first before I make any judgments, because I'm not against the content. It was very much about how they were going to tackle these issues, especially since the cast is underage as well. So that was a big kind of question mark for me. I think maybe there'd be a bit more leeway if it was an older cast, if it was about 16-year-olds and the cast was 18 plus. But 11-year-olds with an underage cast, I was just kind of thinking, how are they going to do this? Because it could definitely be done in a tasteful way, or it could be done in a highly inappropriate way. And after watching it, I think that there were some bits that they did well, and some bits that were unnecessary and inappropriate and didn't need to be there. But I'm just going to talk about it when I tackle each section. In terms of the commentary on the sexualization of young girls. So these are some key bits in the film that kind of stood out to me, and what I've been seeing other people saying is the clothing of the girls. People saying that the clothing that girls were wearing were inappropriate. For the most part, the girls are wearing, short shorts, tight leggings, crop tops, low cleavage. So they're definitely dressing older. You could say older than they should. But from my experience as an 11-year-old girl, I feel like I dressed age appropriate. I don't really think that I pushed it. I think for me at 11, a crop top, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Short shorts with your butt cheeks covered, I don't really see that as that big of a deal. And cleavage, I mean, I think it depends, because there's like a little bit of cleavage, then there's like your whole tits are out, But from my experience at 11, so this was around 2009-ish, I think. So my experience in year 11, I think it was around 2008-ish. So just before the 2010s, the crop tops were all the rage, the short shorts were all the rage. It's kind of this energy of you want to dress older. So in the UK, 11 is pretty much a transitionary period. When you turn 11/12, you change schools. So it's like primary school, and then you go to secondary school, which is ages 11 to 16. And when you get there, you're kind of looking up to the older girls. You want to be the older girls and you want to emulate them. So what do? You start to repeat things. You want to wear makeup like they do. You want to roll up your skirt a little bit, so your skirt's a bit shorter, because short skirts are cool. It's a very stupid and naive time, because you think that you're looking so hot, but you really just look a mess. But it's just a period that you go through. Like most things, you do stupid shit when you're young and you look back and you cringe on it. But I think in every year, I'm making a generalization here. In every year, you have a group of girls that are basically the cutie girls. If you watch the film, there is probably a group of girls in your year that were the cutie girls. They were the ones, non-school uniform day, their tits were all out, they're boy crazy, you're hearing rumours about what they're getting up to at their parties, and they're getting up to very adult things, even more adult than what we saw in the movie, if you saw it. For me, the cutie girls, I can recognise them. I think they were very toxic though, in a dramatised way, but the cutie girls, I can recognise them if I was to go back to my 11-year-old self. There is definitely 11-year-olds out here that act like that. So for me personally, I think that they were portraying reality. I think there's going to be a few scenes, like there was one particular scene where they were in the bathroom and they were talking about sexual things that people might think, well, why are they having children in the film talking about this? But like I said, if I could flash back to my 11-year-old self, there were children out here talking about this and doing more than talking, shawty. So that's why I think it's very important to talk to your kids instead of just trying to hide them and having this naive smokescreen as, you know, children are children. Because that's even just the girls. Because let me tell you, the 11-year-old boys were worse. I mean, they would have parties at their house, but they would watch stuff. So all I'm saying is, if you're a parent watching this, you need to talk to your kids. You need to talk to your kids, because trying to keep things secret does no favors for anyone. And then that puts me onto the point of this whole smartphone situation. The main girl, Amy, we see her on this smartphone and she's just accessing all of these inappropriate footages. And it was very uncomfortable to watch her watch those images, and I did skip those bits. I'm not going to lie to you. I was just like, this is weird. This is making me feel uncomfortable. I'm just not going to watch it. I personally think they could have done that differently. I feel like I don't know. I feel like they could have done that differently, to be honest. But again, that is the reality. Children now have access to so many things. Parental controls can only really do so much. And even if you have the best parental controls, they're always going to have that one friend whose parents are lax, or they're going to have that one friend that knows what VPNs do, or knows that website that you can go to other websites through. I mean, at 11 years old, people knew about those websites. So as much as a society, we try to hide that from children, it's very hard to hide it in this age of information. So like I said, you should talk to your kids. You should talk to your kids, because when I was 11, sometimes even younger, that I definitely ended up on some sites I shouldn't have been on. And I never really had that talk with my parents either. And I think I definitely could have benefited from that. There was also one scene where they have the girls in a close-up kind of doing sexualized moves, like putting their fingers in their mouth. They're doing it in slow motion, and they've got heavenly music playing in the background, and it kind of feels like a fantasy kind of thing. And I don't know. And to me, it's just kind of like, what is the message here? Because the fantasy element just feels a little bit off, because who is meant to be fantasizing at this? I mean, for me, it didn't add up to a commentary of the sexualization of young girls by society. That kind of felt like a bit on the creepier side to me. So I personally didn't think her point came across artistically with that imagery. I think that should have been cut. I just think that was an inappropriate scene. And then we kind of have commentary on, girls trying to copy what they see online. And again, like I said, the age of information is out there, and I do think girls do try and emulate some of the content that they see online, especially music videos and stuff like that. But in terms of the way that they portrayed that, I think in some ways it was done tastefully, and in some ways it was just a bit inappropriate. And I think that could be down to the camera angles. I mean, some of these camera angles were just didn't need to be done. And again, it doesn't really justify the message, especially with that final dance scene. I mean, the bits where they're going into the crotches and stuff, I mean, that kind of makes me question who, as in, is this society or who? Who is this? What is this angle for? It doesn't really need to be done. I think I'm going to go into that in more depth when I talk about whether she achieved her message, and whether, the means justify the ends. But some of these camera angles just didn't need to be there and were a bit questionable to me. And then the whole twerking situation, I think it's just basically what I've already said. Some of it was tasteful and some of it was really inappropriate in my opinion, and didn't really need to be there to get the point across. But what was quite weird is that when those scenes would happen, it would kind of mix into, okay, this is inappropriate, and then you'd see scenes where they're just being girls having fun, and then it'd go back to the creepy shots, and it's just like, it's feeling worded than it needs to be. It's feeling worded than it needs to be, and I feel like the messages get a bit jumbled up with the stylistic choices. There's also a scene that it's not really commentary on sexuality, but there's a scene where she's in a fight and somebody pulls her pants down and it's just her in her underwear and her bare booty, and I'm just like, that didn't need to be there either. I was just like, yeah, that definitely just didn't need to be there. I mean, why is this on my screen? Possession, and then the whole possession scene, that was, again, I was just like, why is this in her underwear? And, some of the stuff they had her doing in her underwear now. So now it's not even like she's got clothes on, but she fully has underwear on. I mean, it just felt a bit strange. And at first I was kind of like, well, maybe the content hasn't been made for, perverse people. It could definitely attract them, but it isn't made for them. But then there's one scene I was just kind of, you can't help but think, what if somebody who is of a perverse nature is watching this? And what would they be thinking right now? I couldn't help but think that in some of these scenes. I couldn't help it. And I don't think that is the same as being uncomfortable, because this is making me think, and this is making me think about how girls are sexualized in society. I think it was the kind of, why is this even here kind of thing. They do kind of tackle sexual assault as well. There is an incident where the main girl is slapped on the bum, and the kind of commentary on that, on, even if somebody is overtly sexualized, it doesn't really give people access to their body. They didn't really dive deeper into that. It kind of just felt like a throw in though. And then of course the scene with her taking the nude, I mean, that just felt very extreme to me. Again, I didn't think that needed to be there. You didn't really see anything, but I mean, it was just kind of like, what? She's doing that now? It just felt very out of the blue. Nobody had even talked about taking that type of picture even within her toxic friend group. So it was just kind of just like, it kind of just felt like they were just throwing anything in there at this point. I mean, it's a thing that definitely does happen, unfortunately, but it just kind of felt a bit random to me, to be honest, that whole situation. And also the situation where she tries to seduce her cousin for his phone. That was just a mess, an absolute mess. And I was just like, hold on a second, like, what? I mean, there was definitely some situations where you just like, I mean, come on, sis. I think we can move in now to the coming of age thing. In terms of the whole concept, it's a coming of age story. I think on paper, I couldn't say it's not a coming of age film. Like I said, it has its good bits and it has its bad bits. They kind of address, the pressures of tradition. I think both, tradition of religion and tradition as in from her Senegalese culture as well. And, growing up in a Congolese household, there is obviously Christian values, but obviously my family is not as strict as this family. Thank you. I'm very appreciative of that. And my parents weren't really strict on enforcing traditional African values on us either. I mean, it was very easy to resist. I mean, they mentioned it and they would say, in our culture, this is what we do, this is what we do. But it was very easy for me to resist and my siblings to resist. I mean, it's not really like we bring shame upon our family. I mean, as a family as a whole, I think we are a bit westernized. We still, there's still certain parts of Congolese culture which I can definitely get down with, but there's definitely parts, stuff like, the woman is the homemaker, she cooks, she cleans, she takes care of her husband and she listens to whatever her husband tells her to do. Those things I definitely couldn't get down with, so I can understand why sis was rebelling. But I'm not going to lie, I was a bit skeptical because I feel like we kind of see these stories a lot, especially when it's like a Muslim type of thing, like she doesn't like wearing the hijab and she takes it off. I feel like we kind of see that again and again. I do think it's done in a more tasteful manner than I have seen before. I think it was very honest. But of course, I've already said what I thought about her rebellion. Some bits were good, some bits were bad. But I do think that was handled well, I think. But I'd be interested to hear from you guys, especially Muslim viewers or people who grew up in a Muslim background or a really strict religious background. Can you relate to her wanting to rebel against that? Or even African people, obviously African tradition as well. It's funny because my parents want me to have a traditional African wedding, and I already told them I'm not doing it. And they kind of like have this thing where it's kind of like, you guys have not followed anything. The least you could do is follow this tradition, at least give us this. So that's going to be quite interesting when somebody proposes to me. I guess it has other messages like trying to fit in. Obviously, she comes from an immigrant background. She, is trying to straighten her hair. She wants to like live her best westernized life. And to some degree, I can relate. I was born in London. I grew up in London. So I've always had a really good balance between British culture and Congolese culture. So obviously there is cultural differences, but I never really felt out of place per se, objectively. I mean, there's situations that have made me feel out of place, but objectively, I've never really felt like I didn't belong in London or didn't belong in the UK. So therefore, I need to change myself to fit in. But the hair thing, I was hoping maybe they would go in a bit further with that. We kind of just see an iron mess. But I think growing up in the West, in the UK, in the West, hair, especially when you're getting around 11 years old, you're going to secondary school and you're seeing all of these different hairstyles. Hair is a really big deal at 11 years old. At 11 years old, I instantly wanted to get a weave because I kind of was made to feel that my afro wasn't desirable. So, as a teenager, my hair literally went through so much. So I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that, to be honest. It was kind of just swept under the rug. But yeah, I do think at 11 there is a pressure to fit in. And I think even though her insistence in being in this group of girls who were absolutely horrible and treat her like shit was annoying, but I've seen it in real life that girls are so desperate to fit into a certain group that they would accept any bullshit just so that they can be a part of the popular group of girls. I've seen it in real life. So that was quite interesting. And I think they kind of slyly address body dysmorphia as well. I think there is one character who makes herself sick and she's a bit of a bigger girl. But again, that was just really just thrown in there. It wasn't really a nuanced conversation. And they also address family life. I guess there is a bit of development there. I did like the family life scenes. Like I said, I do think that they did that well. But there was one particular scene where we see the mother having a vulnerable moment when she finds out that her husband has taken a second wife. And it's all filmed from the view of the daughter hiding under the bed, and you just see her feet. And that scene where she's just blubbering, but she has to put on a brave face over the phone, was really beautiful, and it resonated with me because because I can remember that situation it was an entirely different situation. It was a situation with my mother, and her dad had died, and the African tradition is that you have to call up everyone you know and tell them that your dad has died. And obviously, imagine your dad has died, you're physically and emotional drained, but yet you have to call everybody up and tell them that your dad has died because that is the tradition. And I was literally just hearing my mum calling up everyone and telling them my dad died, and then just wailing and hearing it over and over and over again. And I don't know, the wailing just kind of triggered me a bit because it reminded me of that moment. And it was kind of like, it was obviously hurting her doing it, but she felt like she had to do it because that was tradition. But that was a really beautiful moment. And probably the most beautiful moment in the film, to be honest. So yeah, let's get into the acting. I feel like the acting was actually pretty good, to be honest, but I'm not gonna lie, I fucking hated the girls. Every one of them, the lead and the girls, I did not like them at all. I mean, the girls were toxic, and so was she. Like, I'm sorry, but she was a little bitch, this girl. I mean, the stuff that she was getting up to, I'm sorry, this girl was trash. I have to say, I have no sympathy for her. Absolutely no sympathy. Like, when she pushed that girl into the river, I was just like, is it really that deep for this shitty dance group? I don't think it was worth it. So yeah, I feel like they did a decent acting job, but I hated every single character except for the mother and the brother. In terms of the other aspects of production, I feel like the score was pretty decent, and I feel like the cinematography was actually pretty good. There's loads of great shots in there, very artistic shots in there, but I think, like I said, the style of the shots, some of them were unneeded, especially the really voyeuristic shot. And for me, the style of shots didn't resonate the message in the best way, in my opinion. So with that, we'll get into whether the film achieved the messaging from, so in terms of, you know, how society, or even Western society, sexualized girls, and how girls should be just girls. Because at the end of the film, we do see her kind of, you know, take a look back and see all of the stuff that she's done, and she just decides she wants to be a quote unquote normal child again. She's wearing normal clothes or whatever, and she's jumping a rope like a normal little girl. I can see what she was trying to say, and I think in moments of the film the message does hit, but I think there's also moments in the film where it completely misses the mark, or it could have been done in a better way. So these kind of voyeuristic shots, it kind of makes me feel like, obviously, I think that there is an issue with the sexualization of young girls, or the fact that girls kind of feel like they need to sexualize themselves, and you know, present as older than they are, or try and be older than they are. But the voyeuristic lens, I had a problem with, because from my experience, when people see the ways that girls are behaving in the same way that these cutie girls are behaving, it's usually a side eye. It's usually like these people are too grown. And I feel like there is a kind of overprotectiveness in the West. There is this kind of notion that, I feel like there is this kind of notion of children should be children. I personally don't think the majority of society is looking at these girls in the crop tops and the short shorts in these voyeuristic ways. Yes, there are people with perversions, but those are obviously people with perversions. The normal person might side-eye it, might roll their eyes, might even look in disapproval. But these voyeuristic scenes, I don't think is the overall view of society in terms of how they view little girls. So I just kind of feel like they could have showed it, you know, without the voyeuristic shots. They could have had still mid shots, still long shots. They didn't need to be up in little girls' crotches and stuff like this. The message could have been portrayed in a different manner, in a more safer manner, a softer manner. I get shock value, but I just kind of feel like when you're dealing with underage actresses, there is a certain degree of care that you should take. And I just kind of feel like I personally wouldn't feel comfortable with my child being in this. And I kind of just feel like, are the actors gonna look back on this and be horrified? Because I feel like I would be. And I just kind of feel like, I'm not gonna lie, I have to question the parents as well, because that last dance scene, you allowed your child to do that. I mean, it's just a bit, I mean, the stuff that they were doing, like the emulating acts, it was just like, this doesn't need to be here, and this is just getting a bit strange here. So yeah, it was just a bit, some of the bits just definitely didn't need to be there, and I think I personally can't justify some of the things that were in here. I guess overall, rounding it up, summary, should you watch the film? I think it's definitely up to you. I do think you should watch it before making judgment, and it's up to you. I've seen people say that they've watched it and they were disgusted and they were uncomfortable. I've seen people say that they watched it and they realised the message and they think that, you know, things like this should be shown. And then there's people that are, I guess, kind of like me, where I feel like they're on board with the message, but they feel like this could have been done in a different way. I don't think it is as bad as I thought it was going to be after watching that clip, but there's definitely things in here that didn't need to be in here, in my opinion. If I was to take everything into account in terms of rating the film, I would give it a 3 out of 5. I do think it has a clear message. I think the message definitely could have been portrayed a bit differently. You could see the director's vision I appreciated some of the things in this film. And the only pet peeves that I had obviously was some of the inappropriateness, and I think the structure could have been a bit smoother in terms of its progression, because it kind of just felt like, okay, we're building up to somewhere, then it's bam, crazy, and then it's okay, she's a little child again. I think that could have been done a bit smoother in my opinion. But yeah, that's my rating of the film. But yes, do let me know what you thought of my commentary. Let me know what you thought of the film overall. Let me know what you thought about the overall messaging. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and if you have, don't forget to put that notification bell on. Until next time, guys, bye.